Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening. The death toll in the Israel-Hamas war nears 1,600. Israeli forces take control of the Gaza border fence. Over 3 lakh Israeli reserve troops called up for duty. The World Health Organization, along with the UN child rights and human rights bodies, call for a humanitarian corridor in Gaza to allow medical aid. Iran was not involved in the attacks on Israel, says Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, but he praises Hamas, calls it an irreparable defeat for Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu asked defense forces to prepare for a mass offensive. Netanyahu also dials Prime Minister Modi, who says India stands in solidarity with Israel. The sensex gains over 500 points. The nifty gains nearly 200 points as stocks rebound. Crude oil prices ease marginally after a sharp rally following tensions in the Middle East. The International Monetary Fund hikes its India growth forecast for this fiscal to 6.3%, says the upward revision reflects stronger than expected consumption during the first quarter, pegs medium-term global growth at multi-decadal low of 3.1%, says the global economy is limping along, not sprinting. The Enforcement Directorate arrests 3 executives of Vivo Mobile India, including a Chinese national in connection with the money laundering case after 20 months of investigation. ED has also arrested Hariom Rai, the managing director of Lava. Swiggy delivery workers in Mumbai go on an indefinite strike over reduced pay and increased delivery radius. Claims the company has extended their delivery radius from 4 kilometers to 6 kilometers but hasn't increased their base pay. The Supreme Court decides to hear 6-year-old petitions challenging the validity of electoral bonds. On the 31st of October, petitions argue anonymous donations to political parties promote corruption and violate the citizens' right to information. In Space rolls out a white paper suggesting ways to grow India's space economy, says India's space sector can grow to $44 billion by FY33 if right policies can control 8% market share in the global space sector if rolled out. Mukesh Ambani reclaims the top spot as the richest person in India with more than 8 lakh crore rupees, according to the Hurun list. Gautam Adani's wealth declines 57%. Kumar Birla and Neeraj Bajaj family enter the top 10. Baiju Ravindran drops out of the list. Well, the big story that we continue to track, 1,600 people have now been killed in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, which has entered day 4. Now, Israel continuing to attack the Gaza Strip with airstrikes. It has announced a total blockade on Gaza, which includes a ban on allowing food, fuel and medicines in the Palestinian enclave. The Israeli military claims to have secured the border regions with Gaza. Israel has amassed troops at the border, but no word yet on potential ground invasion. With Israeli bombs hitting residential areas in Gaza, international agencies have called for a humanitarian corridor. The UNICEF, the human rights body, and WHO have called for a safe passage to evacuate vulnerable groups, the wounded, and ensure medical aid and food supply. The UN Secretary General has said he was distressed by the siege in Gaza, which is one of the most densely populated regions in the world. Meanwhile, the Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, has denied any links to the Hamas attack. However, he has praised Hamas and said Israel has suffered a military and intelligence defeat that is beyond repair. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu equated Hamas to savages and has promised to finish the militant group. Netanyahu also called Prime Minister Modi, who has released a statement, the Prime Minister saying that India stands with Israel in this difficult hour and condemned terrorism in all its forms.
The people who support Hamas are fully responsible for this appalling attack. They are not militants. They are not freedom fighters. They are terrorists.
Hamas terrorists bound, burned, and executed children. They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas.
I am deeply distressed by today's announcement that Israel will initiate a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, nothing allowed in, no electricity, food, or fuel. The humanitarian situation in Gaza was extremely dire before these hostilities. Now it will only deteriorate exponentially.
And that is the latest there as far as the Israel-Hamas conflict is concerned. Stock markets around the world staging a rebound in trade today. The sensex and the nifty back home gained 1%, wiping out Monday's losses. The sensex gained over 560 points, the nifty gained over 170 points. Banks and mid-caps outperformed in trade, the mid-cap index gaining over 500 points. Crude oil prices easing in trade today after rallying more than 4% yesterday. Now, investors are keeping a close eye for potential supply disruptions after the Israel-Hamas conflict. But as things currently stand, crude oil prices are flat with Brent trading below $90 a barrel. Speaking of growth, the International Monetary Fund has raised India's growth forecast to 6.3% for FY24, and that's on the back of higher consumption. However, the report does highlight that the IMF expects global economic growth to slow down from 3.5% in 2022 to 3% this year. Ritu standing by with the details. Ritu, take us through the key highlights of the IMF forecast.
IMF says India's growth is projected to remain strong, with its FY24 forecast revised up by 20 basis points to 6.3%. The upward revision comes on the back of a stronger than expected consumption recorded in the April-June quarter, although this forecast is still a tad lower than RBI's estimate of 6.5%. For FY25 as well as for the medium term, IMF sees India growing at a rate of around 6.3%. Inflation here is seen easing to 5.5% this year, 4.6% the next. Now, on the global front, IMF isn't that optimistic. It says that while resilience has been remarkable, the global economy is still limping along and not sprinting. World economic growth is forecast to slow to 3% this year, 2.9% the next year, which is a 10 basis points downgrade compared to the July estimate. The medium-term global growth forecast is also at a multi-decadal low of 3.1%. IMF says global growth remains slow and uneven with widening divergences. The slowdown is more pronounced in advanced economies, which are seen slowing significantly from 2.6% last year to 1.5% this year and 1.4% in 2024, compared to the emerging economies where growth is declining more modestly. Overall, IMF warns that while the likelihood of a hard landing has receded, the balance of risks to global growth remains tilted to the downside. A quick word on inflation as well, where global inflation is forecast to decline steadily to 6.9% this year, 5.8% in 2024, but not return to target until 2025 in most cases. In terms of policy response, IMF says fiscal policy needs to rebuild buffers, but it warns on the monetary side, easing prematurely would squander the gains achieved in the last 18 months.
Ritu, many thanks for joining us. And speaking of global growth, the Chinese government is considering raising its budget deficit for the year in a bid to boost its economy. As per a report by Bloomberg, the Chinese government is looking to issue around $137 billion of additional sovereign debt for infrastructure expenditure. Now, this could raise China's budget deficit to above the 3% mark, so additional stimulus being considered in China. And China's real estate crisis is deepening. Developer Country Garden has signaled that it is likely to default on a loan of $60 million as property sales plummet. The company had narrowly missed defaulting on $22.5 million worth of bond coupon payments. Dr. Reddy's has released a statement saying that its subsidiary, along with several other pharma companies, have been named as a defendant in an antitrust case in the U.S. The lawsuit was filed by Mayo Clinic and LifePoint Corporate Services. It alleges that the defendants restrained competition and maintained a shared monopoly in the sale of the generic cancer drug Revlimid through the settlement of patent litigation. India's largest car maker Maruti Suzuki has said it's eyeing a capital expenditure of around 1.25 lakh crore rupees till FY31. In a presentation that was made to shareholders, analysts and proxy advisors, Maruti has said that the funds will be used to double its annual production capacity to 4 million units in 7 years and launch 11 new models. Maruti says the capex will be funded without incurring debt or diluting equity. Now, shares of LIC under pressure as the state-run insurer continues to lose market share. In fact, it's lost 10% market share just in the last 12 months. Yasha standing by now to take us through more. Yasha, what's the reason for the kind of market share erosion that we are seeing? What's causing this pressure?
Well, Shireen, market share is one thing and I'll come to that. But just look at the premium collection numbers as well. LIC, the largest life insurance in the country, And September was the third consecutive month for LIC when its premium growth declined. As far as the premium collection itself is concerned, in the month of September, it was down 27%. In the month of August, it was down 35%. And in the month of July, the premium collection declined by as much as 47%. Now, of course, there are various reasons which, one assesses would come to as far as conclusion is concerned. The first thing is government's decision to tax long-term savings, high-ticket policies. Now, LIC has a large share in this particular segment. This taxation from the government became effective April 1st. And since then, that portfolio has seen significant amount of impact. Now, for other private life insurance companies, this has been offset due to various other product lines. For LIC, that hasn't happened, and that's clearly visible as far as the premium collection is concerned. Second one, LIC is lagging as far as direct and digital sales is concerned. The third one is deferment in the large group premium. The management told CNBC in the last interview that there was a large chunk of premium which was supposed to be received in the first quarter of FY24. That has been deferred straight away to the fourth quarter of FY24. Now, what you also alluded to, the loss in market share. LIC has lost about 1,000 basis points market share, that is about 10% between September last year and September this year. 357 or 3.57% market share just in the current financial year. All of these things somewhere have reflected in the stock price as well. LIC this year is down about 7%. Compare this to some of the listed private players. Max Financial has gained 32%. ICICI Prudential Life is up 18%. HDFC Life is up 10%, as well as SBI Life has gained 5% in this current year.
All right, Yash, many thanks for joining us. That is the latest as far as LIC is concerned. In other news, the Enforcement Directorate has arrested 4 people in connection with the money laundering case linked to Vivo Mobiles India. Now, this includes Hurun, the managing director of Lava International. The probe agency has claimed that the company has transferred half of its sale proceeds to China to evade taxes. Abhimanyu standing by with more details. So, Abhimanyu, it's not just Vivo, but also the chairman and managing director of Lava International, another mobile phone maker, Hurun, that's been arrested by the ED. What is the ED saying?
The ED is yet to issue a formal statement in this regard, but clearly, as the turn of events suggests, that the net of probe of ED is spreading far and wide as far as this investigation is concerned. It's based on an FIR which was filed by the Delhi police way back on the 3rd of February 2022, based on which the ED had begun its investigation on the charges of fraud, cheating and criminal conspiracy which were being claimed by Delhi police. It was a claim which was made in the FIR that many associated companies were also established by Vivo Mobiles India to transfer the proceeds of profits and also to divert money outside India. So that's the claim which is being investigated by the Enforcement Directorate, and what we understand till now is that these 4 arrests have been made. It's yet to be clarified by the Enforcement Directorate that where these arrests have been made and in which trial court the accused are going to be produced, based on which any further information will come out possibly in the public domain on the charges exactly which are being probed and the evidence which is at hand, based on which the Enforcement Directorate has arrested these 4 people. It remains to be seen whether any more people are also going to be questioned or apprehended in this regard. But clearly, for now, the information that's out in the public domain that the charges of fraud, cheating and criminal conspiracy under the Indian Penal Code, which were stated in the FIR filed by the Delhi police, are being investigated for tax evasion by Vivo Mobiles India by transferring money outside India. So clearly, the ambit of the probe is yet to be clarified because as far as tax evasion is concerned, there will be separate sections which possibly may get added, but that's something, of course, which will be out in the public domain only after the accused will be produced in a court of law or a formal statement will be issued by the Enforcement Directorate.
Abhimanyu, many thanks for joining us. Now, online food platform Swiggy's delivery services have been hit in Mumbai after its delivery executives went on strike. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 the strike has been called over reduced pay as well as an increased delivery radius. Shilpa standing by now to take us through more details. Shilpa, what exactly is the issue here? Why the strike?
Well, Swiggy services have been impacted since Sunday because a whole bunch of delivery executives went on a strike starting from Sunday. And yesterday, on Sunday, in fact, while the delivery was impacted largely around areas like Bandra, yesterday it was across the city where a lot of people were not able to order not just food, but even the grocery instant 10-minute delivery service Instamart as well. Now, as of today, also services are still impacted in certain pockets, and there is a message that displayed on the app which says that deliveries in some areas of your city are currently impacted and will be resolved soon. Now, why are these protests happening? Now, delivery workers are protesting on reduced pay, that their incentives have come down and that their working timings have increased, and then the delivery radius has also increased. That's their main concern. Earlier, they would deliver in a radius of 4 kilometers, which has now been extended to 6. But the base pay that they get, which is around 20-25 rupees, is still the same, even though they have to deliver longer, and they now have to work much longer hours. That's what some delivery executives told us, to make a decent earning. Now, this is what they have been protesting against. However, industry sources have told us that Zomato's services have not been impacted and that none of Zomato's delivery executives have gone on strike. And as of today, as things stand, we're given to understand that while some have returned to work, in some areas like Navi Mumbai and Dadar, some delivery executives are continuing to be on strike. And Swiggy and Zomato both have not yet responded to CNBC-TV18's queries, but your deliveries definitely will be intermittently impacted for the next couple of days.
All right, Shilpa, many thanks for joining us. Now, in space, an autonomous body under the Department of Space has rolled out a white paper suggesting ways to grow India's space economy. The paper says India's space sector can grow to $44 billion by FY33, adding that right policies can help India control 8% market share of the global space sector. The paper further seeks government support for access to finance and private investments to promote the private space sector and wants startups to focus on innovation.
There is a huge amount of possibility of expansion globally in the economy of space-linked businesses, and we also should have a good pie share of all of that in India as well. And we will also look at, based on the frugality of engineering, the cost effectiveness that we are well known for, we must be able to attract large amount of business and potential manufacturing capability in this country to increase the share that has been told in the white paper.
Another sort of story developing in space, and that's about how we take the space economy to a greater height and move from, as you said, from 8.4 billion to 44 billion in a time of 10 years. Now, a lot of things have to come together for this to happen. The very first thing is the enablement from the government. Second part, which has already started in a very big way, is ISRO hand-holding the private sector.
And you can catch that special show right here on CNBC-TV18, India's Moonshot. We will head into a break, but up next, the Supreme Court decides to hear 6-year-old petitions challenging the validity of electoral bonds on the 31st of October. More details when we return. After 6 years, the Supreme Court has decided to hear petitions that had challenged the validity of electoral bonds. The top court will begin hearing the pleas on the 31st of October. Petitioners have argued that anonymous donations to political parties promote corruption and violate citizens' right to information. Ashmit is standing by with more details. Ashmit, 6 years. Finally, the Supreme Court deciding now to take up the matter of electoral bonds. I guess it's too late for the state elections that are upcoming in November, but the petitioners hoping that at least ahead of the general elections, there will be a verdict one way or the other.
Well, that indeed was the very concern that was put across by the petitioners, that perhaps as far as the electoral bonds issue is concerned, it's too late in the day for the upcoming semi-final, so to speak, for the general elections, the upcoming assembly elections. But the concern that has been put across by the petitioners is that they want a Supreme Court decision before the Lok Sabha elections, before the bonds are issued for the Lok Sabha elections. That's the primary concern. And it is keeping that in mind that the Chief Justice of India led bench, Justice Chandrachud led bench, has decided to finally hear the matter on October 31st. That's when the hearings will resume. It's expected to be a brief hearing. The larger question of whether or not the electoral bonds were passed as a money bill, that of course will be decided by a different bench. But at the heart of the issue lies concerns that the petitioners have expressed as to how this tool provides anonymity to people who want to fund political parties, who want to share their funds with political parties. There is no clarity as to who are these persons, who are these large donors. That detail rests only with the issuer bank, which in this case happens to be SBI. The petitioners also hit out at the regime wherein the political parties are no longer required to declare who the donors are. They only require to declare the amount they've received as electoral bonds. They also hit out at the aspect that the companies, as companies, they're not required to declare which are the political parties that these companies are funding. That again is a big question mark, again a grey area. And these are the questions which will be addressed before the Chief Justice-led bench. October 31st, again, will be the key date. That's when the arguments are likely to begin in the final arguments in this case. And that's perhaps when we'll begin to get more clarity on whether or not we can expect a judgment or a ruling from the apex court ahead of the Lok Sabha elections.
All right, Ashpit, appreciate you joining us at the Supreme Court to pick up the hearing on the issue of electoral bonds from the 31st of October. The Karnataka High Court has directed the restoration of Cyriac Phillips' Twitter account. Dr. Phillips, who is popularly known as the liver doc on the platform. This move comes after Dr. Phillips undertook to take down 9 posts against Himalaya Wellness. The court's decision also comes after Phillips claimed that the initial order for his account's takedown was issued without a hearing. It was an ex parte order. Now, the Hurun India Rich List 2023 is out. Reliance Industries chairman Mukesh Ambani reclaiming the top spot as the richest person in India with more than 8 lakh crore rupees in wealth. Adani Group chairman Gautam Adani's wealth declining by 57% to fall under 5 lakh crore rupees, but still managing to secure the second spot. The Poonawallas, Nadars and Hinduja families making it to the top 5 rich Indians after Ambani and Adani. Additionally, Kumaramangalam Birla and the Neeraj Bajaj family have re-entered the top 10 list. Baiju Ravindran, founder and CEO of the troubled edtech companies, has not found a mention in this year's list. According to Hurun India, India has had over 1,300 individuals with wealth of over 1,000 crores, which is a rise of 76% over the last 5 years. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned. The news will continue here on CNBC-TV18.